In this chapter, we're going to look at ways we can change the geometry after it's simmed so that we don't have to go back to the beginning and sim the entire thing again. We'll be looking at examples like jittering cloth, clothing going through bodies, that sorts of thing. We'll also look at a nice technique to help diagnose what problems with the cloth may be. To start with, I've included some Alembic files from one of my sims, so if you haven't done the prior chapters, you can pick up here and have something to work with. Of course, you can always use the simulations you've made yourself. So just to go through what I've included, I've got an animation of the pants, one of the dress, and the body itself. You want to go and unpack all of the Alembic files, and I've gone ahead and added a normal and color just so I can have everything here, and it's a little bit easier to see. The first thing you want to do when diagnosing a sim is just play it back and look at it from a lot of different angles. And what you're looking for depends on what the art direction of the shot is, but usually it's going to be things like what's standing out and drawing my attention to it. The cloth should be accentuating the character, not a specific thing that your eye is going to be looking at. Bring the camera around and just try to look at it a few different loops from all sorts of angles and see what might stick out as something that should be changed. And the first thing I see here is the clothing on her hip. We're going to look at this part of the hip right here. These folds in the cloth have a lot of jitter to them, and they're not very smooth. And some of that's going to be because that's when our constraint was animated, when we were tying it to the legs and then letting it go. And if we just kind of play this back, you can see a lot of jitterness happen. We want to find a way that we can get around that without having to resim. I'll go in a little closer. The first step is to see when does the cloth start misbehaving and when does it stop. And I would say it's somewhere between around 40 frames and maybe 55. Maybe you don't notice it once her leg goes down, so maybe even 50. We really want to smooth out the cloth around this. Well, there's a couple techniques. One, I'm just going to go over to the dress here. So what we want to do is a way to blend around these frames. An easy way to do this is to use a time blend node. And on this time blend node, I'm going to change it to fit range and delete the expression up on output frame range. And I'm just going to set both of these to 40, or basically the frame where the jitter starts. And I want to set the end of this to post hold. So I'll get all the frames at the beginning and then it freezes at the end. Then I'll duplicate that. And in this one, I'll say it's 50 to the end of my sequence. Same with this. And I'll say pre-hold and post-hold is fine since we're not going to go after that anyway. And so now we have it holding until 50 and then moving. Next thing is to add a blend shape node. Hook that up to both of these. And in the blend shape, I basically want to blend from 0 to 1 over the frames 40 through 50. The easiest way to do this is with an expression. Okay. And what this expression is saying is look at the incoming frame. It's FF because it's a float frame, so just in case we're doing half frames, we still have data here. As I see the input from 40 to 50, then I will go from 0 to 1. I'm on a blend of 0, and as I hit 40, I start moving up, and as I get to 50, I'm at 1, and then I'm reading from this time blend. We can make the expression a little more robust by replacing this 40 and 50 with channel references. So I'll copy this one here. And I'll copy the 50 from here. Okay, that's even better. We still have our range. Now what's nice is that if I do happen to change this to say 20 or something, my time blend automatically works and I'm getting my blend. Obviously it doesn't really work that well in this case. So I'll set this back to 40. So this gives us a sort of blend, but it's not going to quite work yet. If I bring the body back in here, obviously we're having all sorts of problems here. We're just cutting through the body and we lose most of our motion. So it's not so much that we want to blend this entirely, but we want to blend just an area where we might need it. So if I go to the original one again, all the jitteriness is really just happening down here. So let's make an attribute so we can paint in where we want to use this blended information. I'll add a paint node, set my background to nothing, and my foreground, and I'll just paint an area along here. And I'll smooth out that as well. After I have that, I want to use this color attribute to control when I'm going to see the blend shape. Now, I don't actually want to change color in this, but I find color easier to work with as an attribute. So I'll paint color first, and then copy that over. I'll make a wrangle, and then write some vex. Alright, so I've said I'm going to use a blend attribute based on the color of the right channel here. One thing to note about vex is to be aware that if I am passing a vector attribute in, if it's going into a float, I'm just going to grab the first value. In this case, I painted in grayscale, so that's fine. And I'll call this getBlend. Then I'm going to add another wrangle and call that apply blend shape. Hook getBlend here and hook blend shapes up to the second input. So now I can blend between the original and the blend shape based on my blend parameter. So this is saying my new position is going to be lerping between my original position, the blend shape position, based on this blend attribute. Alright, and as I scrub through here, you can see it's looking a little weird. We obviously have some little crazy folds happening. You can see that's because the blend shape kept things a little lower than we might want. That's at least a starting place, so I'm going to add a visualizer and just visualize what this blend attribute was so I can really see it while we're looking. Sometimes it's helpful when doing this to turn off lighting modes so we can just see exactly what we've painted. And I can see that I've probably missed some points over here. So I'll come back to my paint node and just fill those in, and then come back to my blend. That's a bit better. Obviously it's really stretched, so we want to clean that up a bit. So I'll come back after my paint and add an attribute blur node and just say I'm blurring color. Have a look at that. Probably up this a little bit more. Alright, if I look at this, it's not really quite working yet. It's definitely still cutting through too much. So I might go back to the blend shape and rethink where I've actually blended this. So I'll come to my first time blend and just see what happens if I start moving this forward frame by frame. And we can see that there was such a wide movement here between 40 and 50 that it was never going to stay outside the legs. So let's try this at 45 instead and just check how this blend's working now. And that's looking a lot better. We're not seeing the leg come through the skirt at all over here. Obviously we're over here, but this part isn't under our painted node. So now if I come back to the apply blend shape, that's working a lot nicer. We don't see anything come through there, and we've gotten rid of a lot of that jittering. We have a little bit of the cloth still going through the body right here. We can use a VDB polygon and a wrangle, just like we did before. Okay, just to go over what I've set up, I took the body and added the VDB polygon like normal. Make it a fairly small voxel size. Make sure to fill interior. I've added a volume wrangle, bring the surface out a little bit, and I've done the normal vex of looking up a volume sample, a volume gradient, and checking in case our distance is under 0, and then shifting the position by the distance and gradient. Doing all those steps gets me to this, whereas without the SDF push, we were something inside. This is actually going a little bit slow, so I may try to increase my voxel size a bit, see if it still works. It seems to work, and that'll be a little bit faster now. We can use that to get this back outside, and now we can have a less jittery cloth because of our time blend, along with making sure that it's not going to go inside of the body.